Keith Urban is on stage for his first show since Nicole Kidman filed for divorce. Golden couple had separated after 19 years of marriage. After nearly 2 decades, the fairy tale is over. And what Keith Urban finally admitted about Nicole Kidman has left fans stunned. For years, their marriage looked unshakable. Red carpet smiles, heartfelt interviews, and 2 stars who seemed to defy the odds in Hollywood. But when the curtain finally fell, it wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the uneasy words, the silences, and the subtle confessions that revealed what many had quietly suspected all along. Nicole and Keith's story began with sparks, endured through challenges, and inspired millions who believed they had found the secret to lasting love. Yet, behind the spotlight, small cracks were forming. And by the time Keith's tone shifted in interviews, his hesitation and distance spoke louder than any direct admission could. So, what really happened? Was it distance, silence, or something deeper that finally pulled them apart? Stay tuned, because we're about to uncover it all. And if you love stories like this, hit like and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Nicole's rise before Keith. Nicole Kidman's journey into the spotlight didn't begin with red carpets or blockbuster films. It started quietly, far from Hollywood's flashing cameras in Honolulu, Hawaii, where she was born in 1967 to Australian parents who were studying in the United States. Her father, Anthony, was a respected psychologist and biochemist, while her mother, Janelle, was deeply involved in advocacy work. Nicole grew up in an environment where intellect, creativity, and empathy were all encouraged, the kind of foundation that would shape her both as an actress and as a person. From the time she was 3, Nicole showed a natural pull toward performance. She enrolled in ballet classes, but it wasn't just dance that captured her imagination. By the time she was in school, she was already exploring drama and theater, slowly finding her voice through characters and stories. Interestingly, for someone destined to become one of the most celebrated actresses of her generation, Nicole was incredibly shy as a child. She even admitted to struggling with a stutter, and social situations terrified her. Acting, however, became her safe place, a way to escape her timidity and step into a world where she could transform into someone else. Her first major break came in Australia during her teenage years. Films like Bush Christmas and BMX Bandits introduced her to audiences, but it was her roles in Dead Calm and the miniseries Bangkok Hilton in 1989 that really turned heads. Hollywood quickly came calling, and by 1990, Nicole had made the leap into global fame with Days of Thunder, where she starred alongside Tom Cruise. From there, her career soared. Awards, accolades, and recognition followed. She became a star not just because of her beauty, but because of her ability to bring depth to every role. From critically acclaimed films to producing and starring in HBO's Big Little Lies, Nicole proved she wasn't just another actress. She was an icon. Her talent, discipline, and relentless drive made her one of the most respected figures in the industry. But behind the spotlight, her personal life told a very different story. First sparks with Keith Urban, Nicole Kidman's professional success had made her one of the most recognizable actresses in the world. But her personal life was more complicated. After her high-profile marriage to Tom Cruise ended in the early 2000s, many wondered if she would ever find lasting love again. Then, in 2005, fate brought her into the same room as Keith Urban at the G-Day USA Gala in Los Angeles. On paper, they were an unlikely pair. Nicole, already an Oscar-winning actress, was the epitome of Hollywood elegance, while Keith was a country musician with a raw, laid-back charm. But something about their meeting left Nicole intrigued. Later, she admitted she had developed a crush almost instantly. The surprising part, Keith didn't call her for 4 whole months. Nicole joked years later that she assumed he simply wasn't interested, but the reality was that he was cautious, maybe even overwhelmed by the idea of pursuing someone of her stature. When Keith finally did call, everything shifted. By the time they both found themselves in New York City, Nicole said she felt a strong certainty that he was the one. On her 38th birthday, Keith sealed that conviction with an unforgettable gesture, showing up at her apartment at 5 in the morning holding a bouquet of gardenias. For Nicole, That single moment confirmed that this wasn't just a fling. It was the beginning of something real. From then on, the romance grew quickly. Nicole invited him to be her date at the 30th anniversary gala of the United Nations Development Fund for Women, where she was hosting. The pair appeared radiant together, their chemistry obvious to everyone in the room. Just a year later, in June 2006, they were standing at the altar in Sydney, surrounded by family, friends, and Nicole's children from her first marriage. It was a candlelit ceremony that seemed straight out of a movie, setting the stage for what many hoped would be a lifelong love story. But as dazzling as their beginning was, life had challenges waiting just around the corner. The dream wedding and honeymoon, the wedding of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, wasn't just another celebrity event. It was the kind of occasion that made headlines around the world. Held at St. Patrick's Estate in Manly, a picturesque suburb of Sydney. The ceremony was intimate yet grand. Guests described the atmosphere as magical with glowing candles, soft music, and an unmistakable sense of joy. Nicole's children, Isabel and Connor, were part of the day, standing alongside their mother as she began a new chapter. The newlyweds didn't waste any time in continuing the fairy tale. They jetted off to French Polynesia for a honeymoon that seemed plucked straight from a romantic film. Private beaches, luxury villas, and quiet evenings together gave them a rare moment of escape from their demanding careers. For fans, the images of Nicole and Keith hand in hand painted a picture of perfection. Two stars who had found their happily ever after. Nicole spoke openly about how deeply she believed in Keith, calling him the love of my life. For her, this marriage was not just about companionship. It was about trust, resilience, and starting over with someone who truly understood her. Keith, on the other hand, often expressed how lucky he felt to have her by his side, crediting her with giving his life a new sense of meaning. But reality has a way of interrupting even the most picture-perfect beginnings. Just 4 months after the wedding, Nicole faced a heartbreaking discovery. Keith was struggling with personal demons, particularly with substances. It was a moment that could have ended their marriage before it truly began. Instead, Nicole staged a bold intervention, encouraging him to seek help. Keith later admitted that it was one of the hardest but most necessary moments of his life and that her courage may have saved him. The world saw a dream wedding and a glamorous honeymoon. But behind closed doors, the couple was already facing a test of strength that would define their relationship. And this was only the beginning. The intervention. For most couples, the honeymoon period is a time of joy, freedom, and discovery. But for Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, those early months of marriage came with a crisis that could have shattered their bond before it had a chance to grow. Just 4 months after their wedding, Nicole was confronted with something she could not ignore. Keith's struggle with alcohol and substances. It wasn't a secret Keith could hide for long, and Nicole, already familiar with the pressures of celebrity life, recognized the danger signs. Rather than stand by silently, she staged an intervention. It was a bold move, one that required courage and love, but she believed in him too much to let the problem continue unchecked. Keith later admitted in a Rolling Stone interview that he felt very blessed that Nicole had taken such a step. For him, it wasn't just an ultimatum. It was proof that she truly cared about his future. Soon after, Keith checked himself into rehab to face his struggles head-on. The timing was difficult. He was in the middle of recording and touring, but it became a turning point in his life. For 3 months, Nicole visited him, supported him, and made sure he knew that their marriage was worth fighting for. By the end of that difficult season, Keith emerged sober, determined, and reunited with his wife. The music industry took notice as well. Despite the turbulence in his personal life, Keith released Love, Pain, and the Whole Crazy Thing, an album that reflected both his battles and his triumphs. That same year, he was named Male Vocalist of the Year at the Country Music Association Awards in Nashville. A sign that his career had not only survived, it was thriving. Their story could have ended in those first months. But instead, Nicole and Keith proved that commitment meant standing together in the hardest of times. Fans saw them as resilient, devoted, and even more united after the ordeal. But marriage is never just about overcoming one challenge. It's about weathering the storms that come again and again. Quick pause. If you're finding this story as fascinating as we are, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next twist in Hollywood's biggest stories. Family expands. After the early challenges, Nicole and Keith entered a new season filled with joy and anticipation. In January 2008, they announced they were expecting their first child together, and the news made headlines worldwide. Nicole's representative shared that the couple was thrilled, and it was clear to anyone watching that parenthood meant the world to them. That summer on July 7, 2008, their daughter Sunday Rose was born in Nashville. The couple released a heartfelt statement calling her an absolute delight and spoke openly about how blessed they felt to welcome her into their lives. Keith, in particular, went above and beyond as a supportive partner. Nicole later recalled how he had once flown halfway across the world just to be there for an ultrasound appointment, spending only a few hours in Australia before rushing back to the US for a show. It was a gesture that showed the depth of his devotion, not just to her, but to their growing family. 2 years later, in December 2010, their joy doubled when they welcomed their second daughter, Faith Margaret. Born via surrogate, Faith's arrival was kept private until Nicole and Keith issued a statement expressing their profound gratitude, not only for their daughter, but also for the woman who carried her. They described their family as truly blessed, words that resonated with fans who had watched them weather earlier storms. In public, Nicole and Keith looked happier than ever. Parenthood gave them new purpose and seemed to strengthen their bond even further. Whether they were attending red carpet events, performing at concerts, or simply speaking about each other in interviews, they painted the picture of a couple deeply committed to both their family and each other. To the outside world, their marriage now looked unshakable. But as time would reveal, even the happiest of families can face trials that remain hidden from view. Shared grief and support. Even in the most picture-perfect marriages, life has a way of testing the bond between two people. For Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, one of the hardest trials came in September 2014 when Nicole's father, Dr. Anthony Kidman, passed away unexpectedly after an accidental fall. Losing a parent is a heartbreak that never truly heals. And for Nicole, who had always shared a deep connection with her father, the loss was devastating. In that painful moment, Keith's role in her life became crystal clear. He stood firmly by her side, offering comfort, protection, and strength when she needed it most. At the funeral, he performed a deeply moving rendition of Amazing Grace, a gesture that spoke volumes about their love and unity. The song, simple yet powerful, left mourners in tears and reminded everyone that this wasn't just a marriage built on glamour. It was a partnership rooted in compassion. Moments like these gave the public a glimpse of what kept Nicole and Keith's relationship strong behind the scenes. They weren't just surviving scandals and career pressures. They were leaning on each other in times of raw, human grief. Nicole later reflected on advice from a family priest that had helped them stay close throughout their marriage. Always kiss hello and kiss goodbye. To her, those small daily rituals mattered just as much as the grand gestures. For years, they carried this wisdom with them, weaving together a routine of affection and respect despite their demanding schedules. Fans saw a couple who seemed unbreakable, the kind of duo that could face any storm together. But as the years rolled on, cracks began to form. Not in the public eye, where they still smiled and appeared close, but behind closed doors, where small differences quietly grew larger. Red carpet smiles versus private struggles. From the outside, Nicole and Keith still appeared to be living a dream. They attended premieres hand in hand, graced magazine covers with glowing interviews, and continued to celebrate anniversaries with sweet posts on social media. In April 2024, Nicole even described herself as so lucky to have Keith, calling him her deep, deep love. Words that only reinforce the image of a happy, secure marriage. They made public appearances together at major events, including the 2025 Academy of Country Music Awards and the FIFA Club World Cup in Nashville. To fans, They seemed as glamorous and united as ever. Their love story still appeared intact, almost untouched by the challenges that had once threatened to derail it. But insiders and close friends suggested that the truth wasn't quite so simple. Rumors began circulating that the couple was spending more time apart, and reports claimed Keith had quietly set up his own place. While neither Nicole nor Keith spoke publicly about the whispers, the speculation grew louder as the months went on. Their social media posts, once full of warmth and family snapshots, became more selective, more polished, almost too perfect. For those watching closely, the polished smiles on red carpets began to feel like a mask hiding something fragile. It wasn't that the love had disappeared entirely. It was that life, careers, and differences were pulling them in separate directions. And soon, those whispers of separation would turn into headlines that shocked fans around the world. Signs of separation. By 2025, the polished image of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's marriage began to show undeniable cracks. For fans who had followed their nearly two-decade-long love story, the changes were subtle at first. Fewer appearances together, carefully chosen words and interviews, and a sense of distance that hadn't been there before. But behind the scenes, reports suggested that the couple had already begun living in separate homes. Insiders close to the pair claimed Keith had quietly set up his own place, a move many saw as a sign the relationship was reaching its breaking point. For Nicole, the shift was both shocking and painful. Sources said she felt blindsided and deeply hurt by the sudden unraveling of the marriage she had worked so hard to protect. She had always been open about her commitment to family and often spoke about the strength of her bond with Keith, so the growing silence between them was heartbreaking. Adding to the speculation was a revealing interview Nicole gave just weeks before the official split. She spoke candidly about life's unpredictability, saying, "How many times do you have to be taught that you think you know where your life is going, and then it isn't going in that direction?" Entertainment Weekly EW.com Nicole Kidman hints at Keith Urban breakup weeks before announcement. For many fans, those words felt like a quiet foreshadowing of what was to come. What made the situation even more confusing was that only months earlier, Nicole had shared a heartfelt anniversary message on Instagram, posting a photo with Keith. She captioned it, "Happy anniversary, baby at Keith Urban," showing the world she was still holding on to the love story that had defined her life for nearly 20 years. Keith, too, had previously spoken about how marrying the right person was the single greatest decision of his life. But as whispers of separation spread, the public began to piece together the signs. Appearances together became rare. And when Keith wasn't spotted at family events where he had once been a constant presence, fans began to wonder what was really happening. By September 2025, those whispers had become headlines. Nicole filed for divorce in Nashville on September 30th, citing irreconcilable differences. After 19 years of marriage, the fairy tale had officially come to an end. Keith's uneasy interviews. In the weeks leading up to their separation, Keith Urban's behavior during interviews became the subject of speculation and later confirmation from major outlets that something felt off. For years, Keith had been open and affectionate when asked about Nicole, often praising her talent and recalling their love story. But by the summer of 2025, that tone had changed. One of the most telling moments came during an appearance on the Australian radio show hosted by Amanda Keller. When she asked if fate had brought him and Nicole together, Keith's response caught listeners off guard. Instead of the warm and romantic anecdotes fans had grown used to, he hesitated and admitted he had no idea. According to People, he even grew visibly uncomfortable during the exchange, pausing awkwardly and eventually unbuttoning his jacket, as if to break the tension. For someone who once encouraged questions about his marriage, the change was striking. Another interview, this time with Ryan Searist, only deepened the sense that something was wrong. When asked how he and Nicole managed to balance their busy schedules, Keith paused before replying with just 3 words, "A job." While the comment could be interpreted as a reflection of the effort needed in marriage, the lack of warmth in his voice stood out. Observers noted that he quickly moved on from the subject, showing little of the enthusiasm that once defined how he spoke about Nicole. Clips from these interviews began circulating online, sparking heated debate among fans. Some argued Keith was simply guarding his privacy. Others pointed to his hesitations and discomfort as subtle admissions that their marriage was already unraveling. As people noted in their coverage, these uneasy exchanges spoke louder than any statement, fueling speculation that the couple's relationship was nearing its end. And as Fox News also reported, Keith's awkward interviews seemingly hinted at Nicole Kidman marriage issues, reinforcing the idea that the clues were visible long before the divorce became official. Looking back, it almost feels as though Keith's silence and his discomfort were his real confession. He never declared the marriage was over, but his tone and body language told the story for him, and within weeks, Nicole's divorce filing confirmed what many had already begun to suspect: Keith's uneasy interviews. In the weeks leading up to their separation, Keith Urban's behavior during interviews became the subject of speculation and later confirmation from major outlets that something felt off. For years, Keith had been open and affectionate when asked about Nicole, often praising her talent and recalling their love story. But by the summer of 2025, that tone had changed. One of the most telling moments came during an appearance on the Australian radio show hosted by Amanda Keller. When she asked if fate had brought him and Nicole together, Keith's response caught listeners off guard. Instead of the warm and romantic anecdotes fans had grown used to, he hesitated and admitted he had no idea. According to People, he even grew visibly uncomfortable during the exchange, pausing awkwardly and eventually unbuttoning his jacket, as if to break the tension. For someone who once encouraged questions about his marriage, the change was striking. Another interview, this time with Ryan Searist, only deepened the sense that something was wrong. When asked how he and Nicole managed to balance their busy schedules, Keith paused before replying with just 3 words: "It's a job." While the comment could be interpreted as a reflection of the effort needed in marriage, the lack of warmth in his voice stood out. Observers noted that he quickly moved on from the subject, showing little of the enthusiasm that once defined how he spoke about Nicole. Clips from these interviews began circulating online, sparking heated debate among fans. Some argued Keith was simply guarding his privacy. Others pointed to his hesitations and discomfort as subtle admissions that their marriage was already unraveling. As people noted in their coverage, these uneasy exchanges spoke louder than any statement, fueling speculation that the couple's relationship was nearing its end. And as Fox News also reported, Keith's awkward interviews seemingly hinted at Nicole Kidman marriage issues, reinforcing the idea that the clues were visible long before the divorce became official. Looking back, it almost feels as though Keith's silence and his discomfort were his real confession. He never declared the marriage was over, but his tone and body language told the story for him, and within weeks, Nicole's divorce filing confirmed what many had already begun to suspect. Well, the final split. On September 30th, 2025, one of Hollywood's most admired love stories officially came to an end. Nicole Kidman filed for divorce from Keith Urban in Nashville, citing irreconcilable differences. For fans, the news felt sudden and shocking, especially after nearly 2 decades of seeing the couple together at red carpets, award shows, and family outings. But for those who had been watching closely, the signs had been there for months. The filing came just one day after headlines confirmed their separation, and sources close to Nicole revealed that she had been fighting hard to save the marriage. Reports suggested she felt blindsided and deeply hurt, not just by the separation itself, but by how quickly it all seemed to happen. To her, the unraveling of their 19-year relationship was devastating, particularly because she had spoken so recently and so fondly about her love for Keith. Public appearances now carried a different weight. The couple had last been seen together at the 2025 Academy of Country Music Awards and at a FIFA Club World Cup match in Nashville. At the time, nothing seemed obviously wrong. They smiled, posed for pictures, and supported one another as they always had. Yet, just weeks later, the truth surfaced. They had been living apart for some time, and Keith had quietly set up his own place. The divorce papers themselves were straightforward, with Nicole requesting privacy and dignity throughout the process. Neither she nor Keith offered public comments, leaving fans to fill in the blanks. The silence only deepened the mystery. What could have driven apart two people who once appeared so devoted? Was it the demands of fame, the challenges of balancing careers and family, or simply the slow drift that sometimes comes with time? For millions who had rooted for them, the end of their marriage wasn't just a celebrity breakup. It was the closing of a chapter that had once seemed like proof that lasting love could survive in Hollywood. But the most revealing moment didn't come in the courtroom. It came in what Keith Urban finally admitted subtly, almost reluctantly, about their relationship. Keith's subtle admission. In the aftermath of the divorce news, fans began re-examining every interview Keith Urban had given in the months leading up to the split. While he never made any dramatic confessions, his words and even his silences painted a picture of a man whose marriage was already behind him. During one of his last interviews before Nicole filed, Keith avoided directly addressing questions about his wife, a stark contrast to earlier years when he proudly shared stories about her. When pressed on how they managed their lives together, he offered short-clipped answers that seemed to suggest distance. His phrase, "life is in session," hinted at the idea that he had already moved forward, accepting the changes as inevitable rather than resisting them. Insiders claimed that Keith's reluctance to talk wasn't accidental. For someone who had once called Nicole the greatest love of his life, the shift in tone was significant. It wasn't anger, nor was it bitterness. It was something quieter, something that almost sounded like resignation. By avoiding direct answers and speaking vaguely about their relationship, Keith indirectly admitted what fans had long suspected, that the marriage had been unraveling for some time. To many, his silence was the loudest statement of all. Where once there had been affection and public praise, now there was hesitation and distance. It wasn't a scandalous confession, nor a dramatic tell-all, but it was enough. Keith had confirmed in his own understated way that their love story had reached its final chapter. For Nicole, the pain was evident in reports that she felt blindsided and betrayed by how quickly things changed. For Keith, the subtle admission seemed to be that life had simply moved in another direction. And with that, the fairy tale romance that once symbolized resilience in Hollywood became a bittersweet memory. Conclusion: after nearly 2 decades together, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban's marriage has become one of Hollywood's most talked about breakups. Not because of scandalous accusations or explosive statements, but because of the quiet way it unraveled. From their first magical meeting at a gala in 2005 to their candlelit wedding in Sydney, their story had all the hallmarks of a modern fairy tale. They faced struggles head-on, supported each other through grief, and built a family that seemed unshakable. For years, they stood as proof that even in the unforgiving spotlight of fame, true love could endure. But love stories don't always end the way they begin. As time passed, subtle cracks grew harder to hide. Living separately, Keith's awkward interviews and Nicole's heartfelt anniversary post just months before filing for divorce all painted a picture of two people moving in different directions. What once felt like destiny had quietly shifted into distance. Keith never made a dramatic public confession that wasn't his style. Instead, his reluctance to speak openly about Nicole, his short and uneasy answers, and his final admission that life is in session became his way of acknowledging the truth. Without ever saying the words directly, he confirmed what fans had long begun to suspect. The marriage had ended long before the papers were filed. For Nicole, the heartbreak was evident in reports that she fought to save their relationship until the very end. For Keith, the story was less about bitterness and more about acceptance. In a way, his silence became the loudest statement, a subtle admission that love, even when strong, can sometimes fade with time. Their journey is a reminder that behind every glamorous red carpet moment is a very human story, one filled with joy, loss, and choices that shape the course of a life. Nicole and Keith's chapter together may be over, but the impact of their nearly 20-year bond remains undeniable. So, what do you think? Was Keith's subtle admission simply honesty about life moving on? Or do you believe there's more to the story that hasn't yet come to light? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed diving into this untold chapter of their lives, Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss the next story. Because in Hollywood, the endings are rarely simple, and the next twist is always just around the corner.